So in the month of March, we're doing this series called Tough Questions. What we're going to do is we're going to deal with some questions we may have about existence of God. So we call it apologetical questions. So we're going to deal with this in the month of March. And as we do the series, I have a favor to ask. I think you also see some situations where you come up with difficult questions in your life about Christian faith. I want you to text me or email me. My email is here on the bulletin. The questions, then we're going to deal with those questions throughout the series. Well, I just said throughout the series, but you will have only 2 Sundays because this is three-part series. So if you have any question, but it doesn't mean that I have answer for all the questions, okay? I act like I know everything. But it's not true that I do know everything. But I think Christian life, Christian journey, we do have some answers for our questions in our lives, but I think it is more about asking good questions. And maybe, I don't know, in some church context, you were not allowed to ask those questions, but here, at least in this series, you can ask any kind of questions feel free. And I gotta let you know what kind of questions we're gonna deal with this series first. So I came up with 3 different questions. Show me the questions. By the way, that's my number. No. Past that. Go. Next. Okay, that's what we're gonna talk about. How does God make sense? Okay, next. Okay, this series we're gonna deal with 3 different. Well, those other 2 are not really in the question format, but how does a good God allow sufferings? That's what we're gonna talk about this Sunday. And next we're gonna talk about science has disproved Christianity. Okay, we're gonna talk about that. And then third Sunday of this month we're gonna talk about a loving God would not send people to hell. Okay, so we're going to talk about those 3 questions. But if you have any other questions, like questions other than that, text me, email me, or after worship, just hold my shoulder. I don't know, write your question on my back with your finger. I don't know. Do whatever available way you can ask question. Do so, and we're going to talk about those questions next Sunday and the following Sunday after that. Okay? Good. And throughout the series, we are going to jump into a part of Bible, a book called Job. And I love Book of Job. And it's kind of long, but I love it in a way that Book of Job is like kind of like SNS style. I don't know how many of you do SNS, social network system. Is it right? Anyway, but what happened here is Job, the guy Job, we're going to talk about it a little bit more later, but experienced like very horrible things in his life. And then he basically posted on his kind of faith book, okay? And then all his friends put some comments on that. So saying like he has like 3 different friends and coming like say, oh, you probably did something wrong and all that. And then and then Job replied to that, I don't think I did anything wrong. I just want to know blah, blah, blah. And then he went on and on and on and on. And then it goes all the way to like chapter 42:1, somewhere there, okay? And if you see that flow in this book of Job, it is a really interesting book. So as we do the series, I want you to kind of read the book too, Book of Job, okay? And one other reason why I chose at least this book of Job to talk about these difficult, tough questions is that he is also the guy who just try to deal with these questions. Not exactly same questions, but difficult questions he faced in his life. And I'll say it is a good part of Bible where we can start to deal with these questions in this series. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. So send me questions. We're going to talk about that. I don't know. The impression I got from you guys right now. I'm not going to get any questions from you. But feel free, okay? All right. So today we're going to jump into the first part of series, and the very first part of a book called Job, which is book of Job, chapter 2, verse 1 to 10. It's in your bulletin, it's on the screen, and I will read it to you guys. Please follow, read it along with me. Okay. On another day, the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them to present himself before him. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And he still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any reason." "Skin for skin," Satan replied. "A man will give all he has for his own life. But now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Then Job took a piece of broken pottery and scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. His wife said to him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." He replied, "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" In all this, Job did not sin in what he said. Okay, today's question is, why does God allow sufferings? That is a very reasonable question, isn't it? You may ask yourself this question before whenever you happen to find yourself in any types of sufferings, And just seeing around the world, we see like a lot of different sufferings out there. And whenever we see those kind of sufferings, people who suffer, we feel the same way and we ask the same question. Why does good God, how is it even possible good God allow sufferings to the people, right? To answer this question, to deal with this question, to wrestle with this question, we got to come up with what this question is really asking. Okay, there are two things, two thesis, two our like main arguments the questioner trying to make in this question, which are number one, God is good, and number two, God is almighty. These two cannot go together whenever see people suffer. Why? Because if God is good, then he's got to do something about this whole suffering situation. So he probably is not almighty. Almighty here means he can do anything. So these two cannot go together. If he is good, he must not be almighty, not all able, right? Because we see sufferings. Good God cannot allow this. So, On the other hand, if God is able, if God is almighty, if God can do anything, that actually means he must not be good God. Why? Because I see the sufferings all around the world. If he is able, if he can do something about this whole suffering situations and he just let it happen, it probably means that he is not a good God. He got to be a bad God. So these two cannot go together. That is actually the main argument anybody who asks this question, trying to make. So these two cannot really go together. But if you look at today's story, the story of Job, we find a similar thing here. We have the same trouble with this story. Speaking of Job, I have a kind of interesting view of this, biblical names. If you not just Job, if you see all those characters from Bible, not many of them live very comfortable life. Many of them, most of them actually lived or went through like very, very painful, difficult lives. And just speaking of that, I always thought that, being a parent, you name your children with a name from Bible. I'm like, why are you even doing that? I mean, let me just pick up some, I don't know, examples, okay? Let's say, let's go with a Daniel, okay? Any Dan here? Daniel? Dan? No Dan? Yeah? Yeah? Okay? Okay. But I'm not really saying that your name is like worthless, okay? But just trying to make a case here. Naming your child Daniel. I mean, did you even read the Bible part where Daniel appears? I mean, if you think about it, Daniel was he was a prisoner, like slave kind of thing, and he happened to be relocated to a very foreign country. And what happened to him? He was like thrown into the lion's den. So whenever baby comes out, you feel like, okay, what should I name him? Oh, I want him to have a life like, get thrown into the lion's den, and then people kind of, saying that, blame him for like praying. Okay, I want you to live that kind of life, Daniel. I mean, if you don't have that kind of, I don't know, vision or that kind of a plan for your kids, how can you name your, child Daniel? Daniel is very heavy name. But interestingly enough, I see a lot of Daniels out there, but I never see, I don't know, maybe you have, but I never seen name Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? Have you ever seen anybody name with those names? I mean, they live awesome life too. Anybody seen? Anybody name? Okay, so it's kind of funny. There are four of them, but we always name our kids with what? Daniel, right? And not just Daniel. How about Joseph? Do we have Joseph here? Any Joe? Yeah, I know Joe Kim's here. Now you're like afraid to raise your hand because I'm gonna curse you, right? But if you actually read the story of Joseph, what happened to him? Whenever you about to name your kid Joe or Joseph, you gotta have this in your mind. You gotta be ready for your child having life like being on eBay, by his brothers, okay? For like, I don't know, $99.99 like dollars, right? Oh, I'm selling my brother, by the way, like online, like so. And then you got to be ready for that. Not just that, it even goes further, okay? You got to be, ready that your child will be sold to, as a foreign country as a slave. Not just that, it happened to what? Thrown into jail. Not just that, what happened to him? Like all kinds of hardship, difficult things, not good relationship with his brothers. So whenever you are about to name your child, your son probably, Joe or Joseph, you got to get ready, right? I don't really get this. How can you name your, not just that, like all other different names, like David. You know what David did in Bible? You want me to go through all that? You see, all those difficult stories, difficult like lives, but you don't really think of that. You guys see your baby like, oh, Daniel. You don't really go through all that. But it's kind of funny because I never seen, maybe you have, I never seen a person named Job, right? Because I think people know that. People know whenever you are about to name your kid, Job, you know that this kind of life is coming, right? But Job is too like out there, but Daniel, Joe, and some other name, even like John. We have John, right? A lot of Johns. I know someone named John too, but John's life, not easy. Not easy. So that's why I named myself Sunny. It's not in the Bible, okay? Even like Bible never expressed the weather with the sunny, okay? So Sunny is an amazing name. Sunny, always sunny, good and bright. But John, difficult life. David, Joe, you gotta be ready for like hardships. Sunny, always bright side. Awesome. Anyway, but Job's life is very interesting. Why? Because, have you read Job before? If you actually read Job before, you know that you're not gonna get any spiritual like inspiration or encouragement from this book, right? What happened to Job in the story? Like God is having this little, I don't know, like gathering. What's going on? I don't really know what's going on here. But this is the only occasion where Satan and God in the same place together, physically. Isn't it amazing? I really love this story. But they're all together, angels, different angels, and there's Satan, God is there, and they're talking. And look at this. Somehow they start talking about person name, what? Job, right? But who initiates the conversation? Satan does or God does? God does, right? Somehow, God asks this question, hey, where have you been? What's up, And Satan is saying, here and there, having fun here and there. And then God brought out Job on the table of conversation first. Have you heard name Job before? Have you heard about this guy? He is so awesome. He's so blameless. He's so righteous. He is just so good man. And what Satan does, hey, because you are giving him all those good things, that's why. And then God goes, okay, then you do whatever you want to do with this guy. And then Job started having these awful events in his life. Now, what can we learn from this story? What are things we can learn from this story? There are two things we can learn from this story. Number one, you live, you live righteous life, blameless, flawless life, all you can, but not the best. Okay? If you make the top of the list, you're gonna get picked, and then God is gonna put on you on the table, saying, "Hey, have you heard about Joe Kim? He's so blameless, flawless, he's righteous man." You don't want to be that guy, okay? So my direction of life is you try to be a good person, righteous person, have a good faith, all that, but not the top, not the best, like third or fifth, seventh, okay? Don't be the top guy, okay? That's the first thing we can learn from the story, because you're gonna get picked up. God's gonna talk about, hey, Satan, have you heard about, Penland? He's awesome. And then, Dr. Penland, you gotta get ready for that. So that's the number one lesson we can learn, right? Number two lesson is this. It is okay to live a Christian faith, good guy's life, all that. But don't try. Do your best to kind of stay away from God. Okay, in a certain distance. Okay, that's number two lesson we can learn from this story, right? Is there anything else we can learn from this story? Look at this guy, Job. Did he do anything wrong here? No, he didn't do anything wrong here. He did nothing wrong. But what happened to him? He suffers, right? In a very serious degree. What can we get from this story? It's the same question we can ask here. God cannot be real. God cannot exist. If God is like this kind of God, God cannot be, both good and mighty God. It's not possible. Maybe in this story, God is mighty God, but he is not a good God. Because the God we see here in this story, is it good God here? Is it good God? So this is church, you can't really say no, right? I'll say this. I don't see any good God in this story, right? But there's one thing we can actually find in the story. We have this, what should I say, some sort of like thinking process. Some sort of like, this is the way we kind of prove that something is right, which is this. If I do A, because I do A, I get B. Works like this. Because I did A, I get B. This is how we think of this, being good, having justice kind of thought process, right? If I did something good, then I gotta get reward. If I did something bad, then I gotta get what? I gotta get punishment. That's what being good is all about. And this is the system of thought we have whenever we see in our lives. Not just like spiritual way, but every part of our life. If you study hard, students, listen carefully. If you study hard, you're gonna get better, higher grade, right? If you work hard, then you're gonna get promoted, right? If you preach well, then people will stay awake. That's how it works, right? I did something, I did A, that's how I get B. Because I did A, I get B. That's the system thinking system we have. If you think about it, if you look at today's story, that system kind of is found many times in the story. Like, show me chapter 1. Chapter 1. Job chapter 1. Oh, wait. If this is first chapter, next page. You know, Job was like flawless. He's an awesome person. But God is saying, okay. Next slide. Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There's no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And then Satan says, does Job fear God for nothing? Oh, does Job fear God for nothing? It means I did A, that's why I get B, right? And he goes, have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. The same system here. I did A, so I get B. Satan is saying, same thinking process. And I'm not saying that, that's what Satan says. We should not agree with him. No, that's not what I'm saying here. But that's the thinking process we have, whenever we face suffering. I don't deserve this. I didn't do anything to deserve this. I did A, I get B. That's the main thinking process we have. Not just that. Job's wife saying this kind of similar thing to Job. If you look at chapter 2, verse 9, his wife said to him, are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die. What's going on here? God does not deserve your faithfulness because he did this thing to you. I did A, you get B. But that's how we measure our God somehow when it comes to the issue of suffering. But let me tell you this. Whenever our thinking process, our reasoning process does not prove anything, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not real. Let me give you an example. I know many of you try to do lose some weight, right? So, I don't really understand why, Why do you even work hard to lose weight? I don't get this. But, I know some of you trying to do that. But what you try to do is, what do? You run, or you do some other kinds of exercise, and then you expect to lose some weight as a result. But does it really happen to you all the time? Not necessarily, right? Sometimes you work really, really hard. Somehow, the extra part of your body, extra flesh of your body, they're still there. They're like, I love you so much, I'm not going to leave you. Right? You did A, but you didn't get B. But doesn't really mean that. It doesn't mean that your life, that extra flesh of your body is not real. It is still real. It is reality. You see? Your thinking process doesn't prove everything. It does sometimes. It doesn't vary in many cases. But when it does not prove things out there, it doesn't mean that it's not real. Not just that. We have a lot of students here. You study hard sometimes for your exams, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get certain result you expected based on the amount of study you put on. The same thing, right? It doesn't necessarily, but you got grade F. Oh, I don't get this. Why did I get F? I study hard. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's not real. What I'm trying to say here is this. We're trying to reason God out of this thinking process. I don't deserve this. And we say, because this system doesn't work, God does not fit in this thinking process that I have. It doesn't necessarily mean that God is not real. We cannot belittle God's presence, His goodness, with our measure like that. The main problem we have is not really actually about reasoning God out. Whenever we find ourselves in the suffering situation, we're trying to find hope. That's why we are trying to make this system kind of to work, because we want to control our situation. Because I did A, and so I get B. If that works, I can do something about this, right? Because it is all about what I do. That's why we find this God who allows our suffering just hopeless. Because you and we cannot really do anything about that. But ironically enough, God actually gives us hope because it works in the other way. If you look at that thing, if I did A, I get B, God actually works, kind of switches the two part like this. Because I did A, I get B, it doesn't work that way sometimes to God, but He switched them around. Show me the other side. Because I got B, I do A, which means I didn't do anything to get that, but I still got it unconditionally. You know, whenever we say, I did A, so I get B, it is all about qualification. I deserve. I do all those kind of things to get that. It is about how much you deserve that thing. But God does not talk about qualification. It actually switches those two around and saying, you don't really deserve this. You're not really qualified, but I'm gonna give you my love anyway. It is unconditional condition. So it is actually about qualification versus grace. Well, if Bible is all about qualification, it actually gives us no hope at all. Because whenever I see myself, I'm not qualified for anything. You know, though I'm like sitting here and talk about Bible here, whenever I see myself, like I see a lot of ugliness in me. And you probably see some ugliness in me from your view too. To be honest with you, if you ask me a question, or do you think you're really qualified to be our pastor? Then I'll say no. Because I'm not that good. I'm not qualified to be here. I'm not qualified to talk about Bible. I'm not that good person. You probably, whenever see yourself, you probably see that too. Ugliness in you. You're not qualified for anything, you know? But if our God is not a God who's saying you did A, so I'll give you B. He's not that kind of God. Our God is actually, you know what? You are not qualified. You don't really deserve my love, but I will still love you. He's that kind of God. He is God of grace. That actually gives us hope. You know, so to answer this question, how does good God allow sufferings? I don't really know. And the funny thing is, there's one thing Job really wants to have. It's not really he wanted to have everything back. That's not something he wanted. He actually wanted one thing. That is, I just want to know why I have to suffer. That's the only thing Job wanted in this story. Not just the story, throughout the whole book of Job. That's all he wanted. I want to know why. What did I do? That's the only question he's asking. But you know what? God never answered that question. He never said, you know what, this is why you are suffering. He never said that. What if God showed up throughout the book, like some point of the book, he showed up to the Job saying, hey, Job, I'm really, you know what really happening is Satan, you know, he didn't really agree with me on you. Well, you know, I was so, you know, I was happy with you. I really liked you a lot, but Satan said, because I'm giving you everything. So like, I felt like, you know, I gotta do something about this. So that's why I did this. So, you know, this is what happened. So I want you to suffer a little bit more, but it's gonna be fine. What if God did that? That would be awesome, right? But he never did that. God never told them why he had to suffer. Same thing here in our lives. To be honest with you, I don't really know why we have to suffer. I don't really know why those people out there have to suffer. But one thing I can tell you is this. Our God is bigger than the sufferings we see in our lives. He is. And another thing is we can trust him that he is on our side. If you think about it, God is challenging Satan. You know what? You can do anything to him, but it's not going to change anything about relationship I have with him. That was a challenge that God actually had with Satan and Job. Same thing from our view too. We suffer a lot in our lives. We see a lot of sufferings other people have in their lives. But one thing for sure is this: that's not gonna change our life, our relationship with our God in our life. Not in a little bit. And we can trust God on that. Why? Because 2,000 years ago, there's one man who was so innocent, who didn't deserve any kind of suffering at all. He was so blameless, he was so righteous, but still went through a lot of sufferings that we cannot even imagine. Why? Because God wanted to prove that this relationship will not change in any kind of circumstances, even in our sins. Jesus Christ, he's saying, Job suffered. And nobody really understood. I mean, Job didn't understand at all why he had to suffer. There's my son. He suffered. And he didn't deserve that suffering, but he still did. Why? Because my love for you is unconditional. It's beyond whatever you can imagine. However, how much suffering you go through, it will not change. And I want to show you that. We'll suffer, but trust God, because he's going to walk with us, and he is beyond, he is way greater than the suffering we go through. And he's going to love us throughout all that, all the way to the end. That's why we can find hope in even suffering situations. Let's pray.